What would you do if, at the age of 12, you saw God? And what if, decades later, you discovered that the entire universe is alive and that you are a part of it? This is the man who challenged reason, dove into the shadows of the human mind, and returned with a secret. Reality is far stranger than we can imagine. Get ready to meet Carl Jung, the psychologist who found God in the unconscious and proved that we are all part of a cosmic story. Carl Jung was no mystic, alchemist, or prophet. He was a doctor, a psychiatrist, but his journey took him beyond science, beyond reason. He dove into the abyss of the unconscious and returned with a map of the universe. This is the man who proved that we are made not just of atoms, but of stories, myths, and divinity. If you've ever had a dream that felt real, if you've ever felt an inexplicable connection to something greater, or if you've ever wondered why we exist, this video will shake your certainties. Warning, you will never see yourself or the world the same way again. Carl Gustav Jung was born in 1875 in Kesswil, Switzerland, but his true journey began in a dark room. At the age of 3, his mother, Emily Jung, suffered a mental breakdown, plunging into delusions and hallucinations. She claimed to hear voices and believed she was accompanied by a spirit named Ion. For young Carl, this was a first lesson. The human mind is not just a physical organ. It's a portal to the unknown. At 11, an even more profound experience. While walking to school, he fainted after being pushed by a classmate. Doctors found nothing wrong, but Jung knew his body had been possessed by an invisible force. He began hearing voices, having visions of a figure he called the Lord of Basel, an entity that guided him like a spiritual mentor. It was then that he decided, I will dedicate myself to the spirit, for it has chosen me. At 12 came the vision that would mark him forever. On a gray afternoon, he saw God in the sky, not as a bearded old man, but as a blinding light emanating a terrible and sublime energy. He is real, he thought, and he is everywhere. These experiences turned him into a solitary boy, obsessed with secrets no one else could understand. He would spend hours sitting by the Rhine, watching the waters and wondering, if God is real, why does he hide? Years later, already a brilliant psychiatrist, Jung met Sigmund Freud. It was an explosion of ideas. Freud saw the mind as a cauldron of repressed desires, especially sexual ones. Jung agreed, up to a point, but there was something more. While studying schizophrenic patients and analyzing dreams, he noticed patterns that transcended individuals. Dreams of floods, falls, heroic figures. They weren't random. They were fragments of ancestral memory shared by all of humanity. Freud called this interesting, but dangerous. Jung insisted, the unconscious is not just personal. There's an ocean beneath the surface and we all drink from it. This was the birth of the concept of the collective unconscious, but the friendship crumbled. In 1913, after years of collaboration, Jung published Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, where he criticized Freud's reductionist view. Freud shot back, Jung is obsessed with God. That's dangerous. The split was inevitable. Jung plunged into an existential crisis. He had visions of blood pouring out of Europe, foreseeing World War I. His mind was on fire, and it was there, in the darkness, that he found himself. He wrote, "My soul, where are you? Do you have a soul, or do I have a soul?" Between 1913 and 1930, Jung wrote a mysterious manuscript, the Red Book. In it, he documented his visions, dialogues with entities like Salamander, Ka, and Philemon, and his own madness. I felt possessed, he confessed. It was as if ancient gods were speaking through me. Philemon, one of the most powerful archetypes, taught him that We are not the authors of our thoughts. They visit us, like birds landing in our garden. Jung described how these encounters led him to create active imagination, a technique for dialoguing with the unconscious. He wrote, "If you do not become an instrument of the soul, it will destroy you." The Red Book was kept secret for decades, considered too dangerous to be published. When it was finally revealed in 2009, the world discovered that Jung was not just a scientist. He was a visionary who dared to map the forbidden territory of the psyche. Its pages are filled with mandala illustrations, symbols representing his quest for order in chaos. Jung found no answers to his visions in traditional psychiatry. It was in medieval alchemy that he discovered a language for the unconscious. The alchemists, he realized, weren't trying to transform lead into gold. They were trying to transform the soul. He studied texts like the Rosarium Philosophorum and discovered that alchemical symbols like the king and queen, the dragon, and the process of nigredo, black work, were metaphors for the journey of individuation. Alchemy for Jung was an ancestral psychology, a map for integrating opposites, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, shadow and light. He identified 3 alchemical stages that reflect psychological transformation. Nigredo, black death, the initial chaos, the confrontation with the shadow. It's the moment when the ego dissolves, like raw lead exposed to fire. Albedo, whitening, purification, the emergence of the self. Here, the individual confronts their anima or animus, integrating repressed aspects. Rubedo, red, the union of opposites, the philosopher's stone. Its totality, where the self becomes conscious. Jung saw alchemy as a spiritual science where matter and spirit are one. He wrote, "The gold of the alchemists is not metal. It's the light of consciousness born from darkness." Jung went beyond Freud. He realized that the collective unconscious is not just a repository of symbols. It's the very fabric of the universe. Myths, legends, religions. They aren't human inventions. They're cosmic memories that exist beyond time. When you dream of a dragon, you're not inventing it. You're accessing an archetype that has lived in the soul of humanity for millennia. He studied alchemy and realized that the alchemists weren't seeking gold, but the transformation of the soul. Philosopher's stone was a metaphor for the self, the divinity within us. And matter? For Jung, it was the physical manifestation of the collective unconscious. The universe is alive, he wrote, and we are part of it. This idea anticipated concepts in quantum physics. Today, scientists talk about a conscious universe. Jung already said, matter and spirit are 2 aspects of the same reality. He saw the world as a network of meanings, where even a stone carries the memory of the cosmos. Jung understood that the human mind is shaped by stories. Suggestion, like hypnosis, works because we access deep layers of the unconscious. But he went further. Autosuggestion is the key to freedom. When you repeat, "I am strong," you're not just lying to yourself. You're reprogramming archetypes. You're dialoguing with the collective unconscious, which responds like a cosmic echo. He used this in his clinical practice. A patient, a man obsessed with suicide, dreamed of a golden man guiding him. Jung interpreted, "It's yourself trying to manifest." Years later, the patient became a spiritual leader. Healing, Jung said, is the integration of the divine into everyday life. He warned, if you convince yourself that you're weak, the universe will conspire to prove you right. Our thoughts are spells that shape reality. Now, the burning question, did Jung really find God? In his book, Answer to Job, he wrote that God is not a being, but a process, the tension between opposites. Light and darkness, masculine and feminine, order and chaos. For Jung, God is the force that seeks balance through us. He lived this. During a trip to Africa in 1925, Jung saw a shooting star and felt a cosmic connection. "I am part of this," he wrote, "not an observer, but a participant." Years later, on his deathbed, he said, "The spirit is life that passes through death and becomes eternal." But his deepest encounter was with the self. In 1944, after a near-fatal heart attack, he had a transformative vision. He saw himself floating in space, surrounded by a sphere of light containing all of human history. "It was God," he wrote, "but not a personal God. It was totality, the union of all opposites. I was myself, but I was also the world." He explained, "The self is the image of God in the psyche. It's the ultimate goal of individuation, where consciousness merges with the unconscious, and man becomes a microcosm of the universe." Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe meaningful events that have no causal connection, but carry profound symbolic significance. For example, you think of a friend you haven't heard from in years, and they call you at that exact moment. For Jung, this isn't coincidence. It's the universe revealing its interconnected nature. He illustrated this with the case of a patient who dreamed of a golden scarab. As she recounted the dream, a beetle, a symbol of rebirth in ancient Egypt, bumped against the window of his office. "The collective unconscious doesn't exist in space or time," he said. "It is space-time." Carl Jung died in 1961, but his work is more alive than ever. Why? Because he answered questions that materialistic science ignores. Why do we dream? What is synchronicity? How does mythology unite us? Today, physicists talk about a conscious universe, psychologists study spirituality, and artists seek meaning beyond the rational. Jung was the pioneer. He showed us that we are not machines made of flesh, but cosmic beings, woven from stories, symbols, and divinity. His theory of individuation, the journey of integrating the shadow, anima, animus, and the self, is a guide to self-realization. "It's not about being happy," he said. "It's about being whole." And so I ask you, if the universe is alive, if God dwells in every atom, what story are you telling him? Jung left a warning. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. His mission was to make us understand that divinity is not in a distant heaven, but here, now, in every cell of our body, in every ray of light, in every particle of cosmic dust. He proved that we are fragments of a whole, and our greatest challenge is to embrace this truth without fear. "There is no higher religion," he wrote, "than the worship of life in its totality." If this video shook your worldview, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to reconnect with the mystery of life. And don't forget, you are part of the universe, and the universe is just beginning to understand itself.